I've always believed that a mother's bond with her daughter is unbreakable. I carried her for 9 months. I held her as she took her first breath. And I stood there clapping and crying when she walked across the stage at her graduation. I thought that bond would last through every storm life could throw at us. But nothing prepared me for the day my daughter, my only child, looked me in the eye and told me I could no longer see my grandkids. I'm 58 years old now. But when I tell you this story, I feel like that lost young mother all over again. If you're watching this, please understand I don't share this because it's easy. I share it because life teaches us lessons in the hardest, cruelest ways. And I know some of you might be going through something similar. If you are, don't lose hope. Sometimes the very betrayal that breaks your heart is the same fire that forges your strength. It all started 3 years ago, when my daughter Emily began pulling away from me. At first, I thought it was just the busyness of her life. She had 2 little ones, a demanding husband, and a house that always seemed to need something. I understood when I was her age. I felt stretched thin too. But little by little, the phone calls stopped. The Sunday dinners turned into excuses. And the invitations to see my grandkids, those 2 beautiful children, who carried pieces of my soul in their little smiles, just vanished. The last time I had them over for the weekend, they begged me to read them Goodnight Moon 3 times in a row, giggling at the way I did all the silly voices. I kissed their cheeks, promised I'd see them soon, and stood at the window as Emily drove away with them, waving until the taillights disappeared. I had no idea that would be the last time for months. At first, I told myself not to worry. Maybe Emily was just overwhelmed. Maybe she and Mark, her husband, were going through something they didn't want to talk about. But then my birthday came. No call, no card, no visit from the kids. I sat at my kitchen table with a store-bought cake I picked up for myself, staring at the 2 candles I lit, hoping maybe they'd call just in time for me to blow them out. They never did. I can't describe the loneliness that comes when your own child turns into a stranger. It's like living with a ghost, not because they're gone, but because they choose to haunt you instead of hold you. I started questioning everything. Had I been too strict as a mother? Too soft? Had I failed her in some way I couldn't see? And then came the message. A short, cold text from Emily. Mom, I need space. Please stop calling. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Don't come by the house. I read it over and over, my hands shaking, my vision blurring with tears. Space from me. I wasn't asking for the moon. I just wanted to see my grandkids, to hear their little voices say, Grandma, look at me. But that night, I sat in my armchair with the phone clutched to my chest, rocking back and forth like a child, whispering, what did I do? Weeks turned into months. My friends tried to comfort me, but you know how people are. They always think they can explain someone else's pain. Oh, she's just busy. Give her time. Kids pull away. It's normal. Don't push or she'll only resist more. But I knew this wasn't normal. This wasn't just a daughter being busy or needing space. This was a wall. A thick, cold, impenetrable wall that I had no way of climbing. And the worst part? I couldn't stop replaying our last real conversation. It was at her kitchen table. I had noticed bruises on her wrist. She brushed it off, said she bumped into a cabinet. But the way she avoided my eyes that day taunted me. Mark came home halfway through our coffee. His smile was charming, but his eyes were hard, calculating. I remember thinking, he's the kind of man who keeps a tally, remembers every slight. That day, he put his hand on Emily's shoulder and leaned down too close, whispering something in her ear. She laughed, but it wasn't joy. It was the nervous laugh of someone covering up discomfort. And when he looked at me across that table, I swear there was a challenge in his gaze, as if he was saying, she's mine. Don't interfere. It chilled me. But I pushed the thought away, telling myself I was being dramatic. I wanted to believe my daughter was happy, that she'd chosen well. After all, Mark had a good job, a big house, and he provided for her. Isn't that what every mother wants for her child? But as the silence stretched longer, my doubts grew louder. Why wouldn't she let me see the kids? Why cut me off so completely? I started driving by her neighborhood, parking a few houses down just to see if maybe I'd catch a glimpse of the kids playing outside. Once I saw Emily through the window, standing at the sink. Mark came up behind her, put his hand on her shoulder, and she flinched. Not pulled away, flinched. My heart clenched so tight I had to grip the steering wheel to keep from falling apart right there. I didn't confront her then. I didn't storm up to the door like I wanted to. I went home, sat in the dark, and whispered to myself, something's wrong. Something's very, very wrong. But how do you help someone who's pushing you away? How do you save a child who doesn't want to be saved? The turning point came on Thanksgiving. I'd cooked a whole spread even though I knew they weren't coming. It was habit turkey stuffing pies, the whole thing. The smell of sage and butter filled my kitchen, but the table sat empty, mocking me. I finally broke. I called Emily again, even though she told me not to. She answered on the third ring, her voice tight. "Mom, I told you, please don't call." My voice cracked. "Emily, please. Just let me see the kids. Just for a little while. I miss them so much. I miss you." There was silence. Then a sound like a muffled cry. My heart leaped. "Emily, are you okay?" Before she could answer, I heard a man's voice in the background. Harsh, sharp. "Who are you talking to?" Emily's tone changed instantly. "No one. Just a telemarketer." And then she hung up. I sat there staring at the phone, my chest heaving. That wasn't the voice of a woman who needed space. That was the voice of a woman who was afraid. In that moment, my confusion hardened into something else. Determination. I didn't know what was going on behind those closed doors, but I was going to find out. And if it was the last thing I did, I was going to make sure my daughter and my grandkids were safe. Because you see, betrayal doesn't always come with a knife in the back. Sometimes it comes with a smile across the dinner table, a hand on the shoulder, and a whisper that no one else hears. But a mother knows. A mother always knows. And that Thanksgiving night, as I sat staring at a feast for ghosts, I made myself a promise. I was going to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it was. The day after Thanksgiving, I woke up with a strange kind of fire in my chest. Maybe it was the wine I'd had with dinner, or maybe it was just the breaking point of all that silence and rejection. But I knew I couldn't keep sitting back and waiting for Emily to call, waiting for the grandkids to appear on my porch like some miracle, waiting for the truth to surface on its own. Life doesn't hand you answers. It hands you questions, and you have to dig until your fingernails are dirty and your soul is tired to get to the truth. I've learned that the hard way in my 58 years. And I wasn't about to let my daughter drown in something she couldn't even name. I started small. I asked around the neighborhood, carefully, casually. At church, I spoke with an older woman who lived 2 streets over from Emily. She frowned when I mentioned my daughter. "Oh, well, I don't see her much anymore. Used to walk with the kids sometimes, but not lately. Mark's the one I see most. He drives out early, comes back late." Her lips pressed tight, the way people do when they know more than they want to say. I didn't push her, but my heart sank. My daughter wasn't even taking her children outside anymore. Something was deeply wrong. I drove by the house again, this time in daylight. I told myself I was just passing through, but I parked anyway. The curtains were drawn tight, even though the sun was bright. A curtain twitched upstairs, someone watching. Or just the wind. My skin prickled. That evening, I went through old family albums, trying to remind myself of better times. Pictures of Emily in pigtails, smiling wide at the county fair. Emily holding her high school diploma. Emily beaming in her wedding gown. Though now I looked closer, was there tension in her smile even then? Did I miss it? I replayed our history over and over, hunting for clues like a detective desperate for evidence. And the more I thought, the clearer the picture became. Mark, he had always been controlling. At first, it seemed like a tentativeness. He wanted to know where Emily was, what she was doing, who she was with. Young love, I thought. Men like to feel protective. But as the years passed, his questions became boundaries. His boundaries became rules. And his rules became walls. I remembered one night after a Sunday dinner years ago. Emily had stayed late helping me wash dishes. Mark called 3 times in an hour. When she finally answered, she whispered, "I'll be right home, I promise." She hugged me quickly, eyes darting to the clock, and left in a rush. I thought she was just being considerate to her husband. Now I realized it was fear. The next week, I decided I couldn't stay silent any longer. I drove to Emily's house, parked in the driveway, and knocked. My heart pounded as I heard footsteps approach. The door cracked open. Emily's face appeared, pale, strained. "Mom," she hissed. "What are you doing here?" "Can't just Emily, please?" I whispered. "I just want to see you, to see the kids." 2 minutes, that's all. She looked over her shoulder, panic flashing in her eyes. Then she stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her. She held it half shut, as if afraid it might swing open. "You can't come in," she said quickly. "They're sleeping. At 2 in the afternoon?" My stomach twisted. I reached for her hand. She pulled back like my touch burned. "Emily, what's going on?" I asked. "Are you okay? Can tell me. You can tell me anything." Her eyes welled up, but she blinked the tears away. "Mom, please, just stop. You're making things harder." "Harder? How?" I demanded, lowering my voice but leaning closer. "What is Mark doing? Tell me." Her lips trembled. For a second, I saw my little girl in her again, the one who used to run to me after falling off her bike, crying that her knee hurt. But now, instead of running to me, she was pulling away. "I have to go," she whispered, and slipped back inside before I could stop her. The door closed. I stood there on the porch, shaking, listening to the lock click into place. That night, I barely slept. I paced the house, prayed, cried, and asked myself the same question over and over. How could my daughter be so far away when she lived just across town? And then fate handed me the first piece of the puzzle. I was at the grocery store a few days later, standing in line when I heard 2 women gossiping behind me. I normally tune that sort of thing out, but one of them said Mark Henderson clear as day. My ears sharpened. Yeah, the first woman said, "I heard he's in deep with those poker nights. Owes a lot of money. Can't keep it quiet much longer." The second woman laughed. "Figures, flashy type. Acts like he's got it all, but it's all smoke and mirrors." I turned, my heart thudding. "Excuse me? Did you say Mark Henderson?" I forced a smile. "Sorry. That's my son-in-law's name. Are you sure it's the same one?" The first woman shrugged. "If he drives a black BMW and works over at that construction firm on Maple, yeah, that's him." I felt the blood drain from my face. That was him, no doubt. I smiled stiffly, paid for my groceries, and practically stumbled out of the store. My hands shook so badly I could barely unlock my car. Mark, gambling debt? My daughter cut me off right when he was drowning in trouble. Coincidence? No, he didn't want me around. He didn't want me asking questions. Worst of all, he didn't want me near my grandkids, maybe, because he planned to use them as leverage. Or worse, that night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table staring at the dark window. My reflection looked back at me, older now, lined with worry, eyes weary from years of holding everything together. But behind that reflection, I saw Emily's face, pale, tight, afraid, and I made another promise to myself. I wasn't going to lose her. Not to Mark, not to silence, not to fear, but I also knew this: if I confronted her directly again, she'd only push me further away. Mark's grip on her was strong, too strong. I had to be smart, careful, patient. So I started keeping notes. Dates of when I called, when I saw them, anything suspicious I observed. I wrote down what the women at the grocery store had said. I started checking court records online. And what I found made my stomach turn. 2 small claims filed against Mark in the past year. unpaid debts. He wasn't just reckless. He was drowning. And if my instincts were right, he was pulling my daughter under with him. The weight of it all pressed down on me. Some nights I'd sit in the dark, whispering to the empty room, "Why? Emily, why can't you just come home? Why won't you let me help?" But deep down I knew. She wasn't keeping me away because she didn't love me. She was keeping me away because she was trapped. She thought keeping me out was the only way to protect me. It broke my heart, but it also steeled my resolve. I wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. The first frost of winter settled over town when I realized how close I was to losing everything. Not the kind of loss you measure in money or property worse than that. I could feel my daughter slipping away, like sand through my fingers, and every time I reached out to catch her, she pulled back harder. Still, I refused to stop. Call it stubbornness, call it mother's intuition, but I knew the distance between us wasn't natural. There was something or someone wedged between us, and I was determined to rip it out. One Sunday after church, I drove past Emily's house again. I know, it sounds obsessive, but when your only child has shut you out, you cling to scraps. The driveway was empty. Mark must have been gone. My heart thumped when I saw Emily through the window, standing in the kitchen, holding a mug of coffee. She looked thin, pale, like the weight of the world sat on her shoulders. I pulled over and stepped out before I could talk myself out of it. I knocked softly. She opened the door a crack, startled. "Mom, you can't just—" "I'm worried about you," I said firmly. "Emily, please. You don't look well. Let me in." 5 minutes. She hesitated, then finally opened the door. My heart swelled just being in her home again. The smell of coffee, the kids' toys on the rug, it felt like family, like life. But then I noticed the tension in her movements. The way she kept glancing at the clock, listening for a car in the driveway. We sat at the table. "Emily," I said softly, "what's happening? Why won't you let me see the kids? Why do you keep pushing me away?" Tears filled her eyes, but she shook her head. "You don't understand. Mark says—" She stopped herself, biting her lip. "Mark says what?" I pressed. She looked at me and for a flicker of a second saw the truth in her eyes. "Fear, I can't talk about this," she whispered. "Please, Mom, if you love me, stop asking questions." And just like that, the front door slammed. Mark was home. His voice boomed, cheerful on the surface but sharp underneath. "Em, whose car is that outside?" Emily jumped up, panicked. "You need to go," she hissed. Now I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my arms around her and drag her out of that house. But instead, I walked out the back door, tears stinging my eyes, and slipped to my car before he saw me. That was the moment I knew I couldn't wait for Emily to tell me the truth. I had to find it myself. I hired a private investigator. Her name was Lisa, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a steady voice. She didn't judge me when I explained everything. She just nodded, pulled out a notepad, and said, "Let's see what he's hiding." 2 weeks later, she sat in my kitchen, laying out photographs and documents like pieces of a nightmare puzzle. "Your son-in-law has been attending underground poker games," she explained. "He's in debt tens of thousands, maybe more. He's taken out short-term loans at obscene interest rates. And he's seeing another woman." My chest tightened. "Another woman?" Lisa slid a photo across the table. Mark, arms slung around a younger blonde, laughing outside a bar. My stomach churned. "Your daughter doesn't know," Lisa said. "At least not the full extent. But he's keeping her isolated. That's classic control. Keep her cut off from support. Make her depend on him. Then she won't question the lies." I stared at the photo until it blurred. The man who'd vowed to love and protect my daughter was gambling away their future, cheating behind her back, and building walls between her and everyone who cared about her. And worst of all, she was defending him. That night, I called Emily. My voice shook, but I told her the truth. "Emily, I know about Mark. The gambling. The debts. The other woman." Silence. Then her voice cold as steel. "Mom, stop. You're lying. You've hated him from the beginning, And now you're making up stories to poison me against him. Emily, please, I have proof. I can show you. I don't want to see it. She snapped. Do you hear me? I don't want to see it. You're the problem, Mom. You've always been the problem. If you can't accept my husband, then stay away. Stay away from me. Stay away from my children. Her words sliced me open. My own daughter, the baby I'd cradled in my arms. The girl I'd raised with every ounce of my love had turned her back on me. I hung up the phone and sobbed until my chest ached. It felt like grieving a death, but grief eventually gives way to anger, and anger sharpens into resolve. Lisa kept digging. Weeks passed, and each new discovery twisted the knife deeper. Mark wasn't just in debt. He was planning something worse. One evening, Lisa slid a folder toward me. I think you need to see this. Inside were emails, printouts, and receipts. Mark had been contacting a lawyer in another state, asking questions about custody laws, relocation, and how to transfer large sums of money overseas. My blood ran cold. He's planning to disappear, Lisa said flatly. Take the kids, take whatever money he can, and vanish. If your daughter doesn't wake up soon, she could lose everything. I pressed my trembling hands to my face. Dear God, the thought of Emily calling me one day, sobbing that her children were gone, that her husband had abandoned her with nothing knit, was unbearable. I knew then what I had to do. I couldn't wait for Emily to believe me. I couldn't wait for her to see the truth on her own. I had to intervene. But how? If I confronted Mark, he'd deny everything. If I pushed Emily, she'd retreat further. And if I went to the police without concrete proof, they'd shrug me off. I sat awake night after night, staring at the ceiling, thinking of my grandchildren's faces, their innocent smiles, their laughter. I couldn't let them vanish into Mark's schemes. Finally, one sleepless night, I whispered into the darkness, I will not lose my family. Not like this. And that was when the plan started forming in my mind. A risky plan, one that might cost me everything, but one that might just save my daughter and her. Children from the betrayal they couldn't yet see. The night I made my decision, the wind howled through the trees outside my window like a warning. I sat at my kitchen table with a pen and paper, my hands trembling as I scribbled down everything Lisa had uncovered. The debts, the affairs, the lawyer's emails about custody and relocation, the receipts for wire transfers he hadn't told Emily about. I spread them out like cards in a losing hand, and I thought about my daughter, my sweet Emily, who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms and whisper, "Don't let go, Mama." I hadn't let go. Not then, not ever. But she had, or at least she thought she had. I couldn't force her to believe me. I couldn't make her love me again. But I could save her. Even if she didn't know she needed saving, the plan was simple on paper but terrifying in reality. I would gather enough evidence that no court, no police officer, no one could ignore. And then I would confront Mark not with pleading or accusations, but with hard, undeniable truth. The opportunity came faster than I expected. A week later, Emily called me out of the blue. My heart nearly stopped when I saw her name on the screen. I answered on the first ring. "Mom," she said, her voice small and tired, "can you come over? Just don't make a scene, please." I grabbed my coat before she could change her mind. When I walked into her house, the kids were asleep upstairs. The living room smelled faintly of whiskey and stale air. Emily sat on the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. "He's been gone more and more," she whispered, "sometimes all night. He says he's working, but I don't know. I just don't know anymore." I sat beside her and placed my hand over hers. "Sweetheart, I have something to show you." I slid the folder onto her lap. She frowned, confused, then started flipping through the papers. At first, her face was blank. Then the color drained from her cheeks. These are his emails," she stammered. "Yes," I said gently. "And the bank records. The gambling. The woman." Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "No, he wouldn't. He couldn't, Emily. He could. And he has." He's planning to leave. With the kids. He's building an escape route. And when the time comes, he'll disappear. You'll be left with nothing. She covered her mouth, her body trembling. Oh my God. Before I could say more, the front door slammed. Mark's heavy steps filled the hall. My stomach dropped. What's this? He barked, spotting the folder in Emily's lap. His face twisted when he saw the documents. He turned on me, eyes blazing. You've been digging into my life. Yes, I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. And I found enough to put you behind bars if I want to. He lunged toward me, but Emily jumped up, blocking his path. Mark, stop. Don't you dare touch her. The raw fear and betrayal in her voice froze him in his tracks. For the first time, I saw doubt flash across his face. Emily wasn't blindly defending him anymore. This isn't what it looks like, he muttered. But his voice cracked. It looks like you've been lying to me. Gambling away our money, cheating behind my back, and planning to steal my children. She shouted. Her voice shook, but it was filled with a strength I hadn't heard in years. The kids stirred upstairs. Mark cursed under his breath, grabbed his coat, and stormed out the door. The sound of his tires screeching down the street was the sound of something breaking. Maybe a marriage. Maybe a spell. Maybe both. Emily collapsed on the couch, sobbing. I wrapped my arms around her like I had when she was little. I whispered, you're safe now. The kids are safe. He's not going to take them from you. That night was the beginning of the end. Over the next weeks, Emily filed for separation. Lisa helped us get the evidence into the right hands, and soon the police were involved. The debts, the fraud, the illegal gambling, they all piled up until Mark was trapped by his own lies. He tried to fight, of course. He tried to twist the story to paint himself as the victim. To say I had manipulated Emily, but the truth was too loud now. Emily stood in court, holding her head high, and said, I will not let you hurt me or my children anymore. And I sat in the back row, tears streaming down my cheeks, whispering silent prayers of gratitude. My daughter was free. My grandchildren were safe, but freedom comes with scars. For months, Emily barely spoke to me. She wasn't angry anymore. Not exactly. But she was ashamed that she hadn't seen the truth sooner. Ashamed of the choices she'd made. Ashamed of pushing me away when I had only ever wanted to protect her. One evening, as we washed dishes side by side in her kitchen, she finally said it. Mom, I'm sorry. For everything. For not believing you. For saying those awful things. You were right, and I was too blind to see it. I set down the dish I was holding and took her hand. Emily, listen to me. I don't need apologies. I just need you. I need my daughter back. And those babies upstairs need their mother whole. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm trying, Mom. I really am. She was. Day by day, step by step, she rebuilt her life. She went back to school for a certification. She got a steady job. She learned how to balance a checkbook without Mark's interference. She found herself again not the scared, silenced woman he had tried to create, but the strong, resilient girl I had raised. Watching her rise from the ashes was the greatest gift of my life. But I'd be lying if I said the betrayal didn't change me. It taught me that love, even the deepest kind, can be twisted by lies. It taught me that sometimes protecting the people you love means standing against them when they can't see the danger themselves. And it taught me that no matter how old we are, no matter how much we've lived, we must keep learning, keep fighting, keep surviving. Because survival isn't just about holding on. It's about turning pain into power. Now, when I sit on my porch in the quiet evenings, I think about the legacy I'll leave behind. Not money, not houses, not things that can be gambled away or stolen. My legacy is strength, resilience, the knowledge that when life tried to break me in, my daughter, I refused to let it. If you're listening to this, I want you to hear me clearly. It's never too late to fight for yourself. It's never too late to rise from betrayal, from heartbreak, from loss. You carry more wisdom inside you than you realize. And one day when life tests you, That wisdom will save you. So don't give up. Don't let go. And don't ever believe that your story is over. Because sometimes the ending you feared most, the betrayal, the loss becomes the beginning of the strength you never knew you had. And that, my friends, is why I sit here today, not broken, but whole. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too.